3.
All right, welcome to the new JFK show number 261. I'm going to go ahead and be honest, sound a little fun. Palsy. It's going to take a couple of weeks to a few months to go away, but that doesn't mean I'm going to slow down. All right, last week I was in Dealey Plaza for the JFK moment of silence. Larry gave a Zoom presentation, and fellas, I'd like to kind of talk about that a little bit. The moment of silence is no longer a moment of silence. What we did have was around 400 QAnon people that were just hooting and hollering, and they had T-shirts on. They all had the same T-shirt on. One was of Trump, in the middle was JFK, and I didn't know what it was at first, but it's actually JFK Jr. And they're proclaiming that he's still alive and is going to come back and do something. So I was really disappointed how the JFK moment of silence has turned into basically a circus out there, is what it was, you know. But also, when I did go out to the moment of silence, Judy Baker actually recognized me, and she was running the show, and she asked me to speak because they were running short on speakers. So I said I would do it. And I was able to talk, and I explained who I was, and I gave a talk about, the Cuban Missile Crisis. But when Judy introduced us as Gary King of the new JFK show, everyone in the whole audience knew who we were and knew who I was. And after the end of it, everyone, at least 5 families came up to me and said, "You guys are great. Larry's great. And I've been following your work for a very long time." So it makes us feel good, that people do remember who we are after a 2-year absence. And I was able to say at the end of my speech, and Larry Rivera demonstrated last week and at your very conference, proof that Lee was standing in the doorway right over there. I was just a few feet away, and everyone's head bobbed up and down, and they all clapped. So I was really happy about that. Now, I'm 95% sure that the house that Lee stayed on Beckley, what is the address, Larry? Is it 1036 Beckley?
Yeah, 1024 North Beckley.
Yeah. Look, I looked for it pretty hard. I think it's gone. There's a big highway and all kind of construction work and all that. But I did go to where the backyard photos were, and Neely Street, and it's still there. Same stairway, same picket fence. You can, hold your guns up and, match the photo. So that's good news right there. And one other thing that did happen during the moment of silence, which I knew what was going on. There was a big limo, and right at the right time, it came down Dealey Plaza and slammed on the brakes and waited, the proper amount of seconds before it sped off. So a lot of people thought he was an idiot, but I knew what he was doing.
Really?
He was actually right about it. They sure
That's
did.
very impressive. I love that.
Yeah. All under the backdrop of screaming on people. And I have to admit, the people on the triple overpass, you got to remember, 400 QAnon people on the triple overpass yelling Trump won, Michael Jackson's still alive, and all that. However, the people in the cars that were going under it, they weren't part of it. And they were blowing their horn, for Trump, whatever, you might think about that. So anyway, all right. So Larry's got some killer stuff for tonight about Michael Paine. But just before we do that, Jim's got a little bit on the Oliver Stone movie, which I did watch from beginning to end. And we're going to be getting to that very, very soon. And hopefully make an impact, because if he comes to his senses, he can get in contact with us, and we can make sure the other 2 hours part of his documentary. See, it's a 4-hour documentary. They released 2 hours. So there's 2 hours to go, which means we still have hope of, getting to the guy and not Groden or Jim getting to him first. All right, Jim. Glad to
Well,
have you.
I wouldn't hold our breath, Gary. I wanted to comment on your experience in Dealey Plaza.
Uh-huh.
The moment of silence has turned into a clown show. That's deliberate. That's a psyop. That's a CIA thing to get 400 people up there wearing shirts at Trump and JFK Jr. and making claims like that. That's intended to discredit the JFK movement and make us out to be a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing clowns like them. That's bad. That's not good. I think that you received this recognition when we haven't been on the air for nearly 2 years. I think that's a very good sign, and it means an awful lot of people, when they watch the Oliver Stone film, are going to know it's a very superficial treatment. Now, speaking of Oliver, let me share with you an email I sent to him in your honor. Oliver, looking forward to your new film. Here's what we have found. With admiration, Jim. 18 November. I made a point of sending it to him and doing my version before his would be revealed. So you can find it on my BitChute channel. Go down to 18 November, you'll find it. And notice the comments. Dedicated to Oliver Stone, whose new film will be released on 22 November 2021. His JFK was a masterpiece with 3 flaws. He did not know Oswald was in the doorway of the book depository at the time the JFK motorcade passed by, or that the Zapruder film had been massively edited, no doubt because he was relying upon advice from Robert Growen, who has played the JFK community virtually from the beginning. And he posited 3 hit teams when there turned out to have been 8 assassins. My worry is that this sequel, which I have been told was screenwritten by one Jim DiEugenio, may suffer from similar defects. We shall see. Now, one of the best commentators on my blog wrote this just today. I've watched Jim's overview of the assassination, and it is so much more convincing than that of Oliver Stone. Stone just doesn't have the total grasp on the evidence that Fetzer does, and he doesn't see what DiEugenio is eluding, like the number of shooters and the plurality of interests arrayed against Kennedy. I wonder if DiEugenio's hit piece on Fetzer was simply to secure his position with Stone, or was it something more sinister, like further blackening Fetzer's name in service to the intelligence services at all? It wouldn't do for the people behind Posner, Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, et cetera, for James Fetzer to be validated as a JFK researcher for an illustrious American film director. In this way, Stone is a limited hangout. His most telling quote in this article is, "I'm just a passerby, I'm a tourist." This is true. Witness his claim that JFK researchers are in contention over the Zapruder film. Was it altered or was it not altered? It goes on forever. It does. And of course, as we know, the fact of the matter is that I demonstrate, and Larry has done brilliant work confirming what John Costello already had established based upon his study of internal features of the film, that it was massively edited, that there are more frames missing than remain in the extant version of 487, where 100 are missing from the turn from Houston on down, and another 400 during the limo stop, during which so much activity Larry has described so very skillfully took place. So I'm very concerned that Jim DiEugenio played Oliver Stone for the second time. I was concerned when he came up with his hit piece that it had precisely that motivation. Perhaps I should have written to Oliver Stone and explained to him how odd this was, because from my review of what DiEugenio had published, he was talking about every aspect of my research, not just JFK, 9/11, the moon landing, Wellstone, Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, even the Holocaust, and I do not believe there's a single claim that he makes about my work that is accurate and true. It's disgusting. It was a pure hit piece. And as you both know, it took a 7-hour video presentation to present all the evidence demonstrating conclusively that everything that Diogenio had published was bunk.
That
And
was 4 years
was,
ago. That was 4
I-
years ago,
I know
2017.
4 years ago. See, that's just when he was gearing up to start collaborating with Oliver, wanted to make sure he muscled me out. And it illustrates well how it's easy to lie and it can be complicated to explain why something you're being told is a lie. Perfect illustration.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
what we are going to be doing for the next several programs is reviewing Oliver Stone's film in segments. But anyone who wants to go to my BitChute channel, Jim Fetzer, should scroll down to 18 November and take a look. It's also embedded on my blog, so you can find it there too at jamesfetzer.org. Now, Larry has some new work about Michael Paine, who was the husband of Ruth Payne. We both know they had ties to the CIA. You can find a review of Mrs. Payne's garage on my assassinationscience.com site. And Larry is continuing to do brilliant path-breaking research on a whole host of subjects. So, Larry, I have made you the host. Take it away.
Thank you, Jim. One of the things that I found, because I've scoured this Oliver Stone movie, I've seen it a few times, and anytime you're going to use the image, the photograph of Lyndon Johnson taking the oath before Judge Sarah, what was her name?
Yeah, they brought her in for the purpose.
Yeah,
Rosenbaum,
yeah, right.
or something like that.
Yeah, and that most iconic photograph, you know, of him with Jackie next to him, who is still in shock and still, you know, blood, you know, from head to toe. And we all know that there was a photo shot at the time, but there was also a second photo with Al Thomas in the background winking. Okay,
Yeah.
but he prefers to use the one that's always been in the mainstream, you know, where he's not winking. Okay, and he stays on that photo for, you know, maybe about 20 seconds, you know, and he comes back to it once or twice. And I was thinking to myself, you know, right now when they said limited hangout, you know, that there it is right there. You know, if you really wanted to show, you know, clear evidence, you know, of something very strange going on in LBJ's camp, you know, and the people that were associated with him in Dallas, I mean, that's the perfect image, you know, because, you know,
the wink image.
Right, the wink.
Right.
Yeah, you know, and Oliver Stone doesn't even show that image, that photograph, you know. I mean, you know, why even bother to show the other one, you know, where he's taking the oath, if you're not going to show that one? That's
right. That's a great point, Larry, because it would show we all have this impression, but actually there was something going on behind the scene, and here it is in consecutive images or frames. I mean, fantastic.
Which to this day,
I've been told in the LBJ library of all those photographs, there's one negative missing, and it's the wink negative. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, and you know, and that's, I mean, that's the one that's really, you know, I mean, that impresses you in a way that says, wait a minute, you know.
At the beginning of the documentary, they could show a little bit of the turmoil between Israel and JFK. I mean, the letter to Ben Gurion should have been shown. The JFK letter to Ben Gurion should have been in there.
Well, it's like Professor Harwood, you know, he had a whole laundry list of stuff that should have been included. But like I said in an email answering, you know, 2 hours, you know, there were just 2 hours. I thought that he chose his experts pretty well, you know,
They had some good people.
Because when you have it, and when you have in a lineup, you know, Dr. Mantic, you know, and you have, you know, others, you know, that Douglas Horn, for sure, you know, and they were allowed to speak their mind, you know, and Judge Tuneheim and And you know, the collection of people I thought was right on. I just thought that certain areas, you know, could have been explored a little bit better, you know, but again, in 2 hours, you know, at least, you know,
Larry, we're going to go through the film in detail. So, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Larry, right before we get going, all right, as far as Ruth Payne, all right, the morning of the assassination, Lee's wife was at Ruth Payne's house. All right. Lee lived in New Orleans, and Ruth Payne came to New Orleans, picked her up, all because they were supposedly going to learn Russian together, something like that. So Ruth Payne is like dead center in this whole thing. So is there anything else that we all need to know about Ruth Payne?
Jim knows the whole story better than any of us.
Well, I just want to follow up on something you said there. If they have Doug Horn, how come Oliver Stone is still in doubt over whether the Zapruder film has or has not been massively edited? I mean, this is so obvious. The proof is so stunning. It seems to me a major lapse if he's still in doubt about the authenticity of the film. I mean, when he made JFK, it's one thing because it was being advised by Groden, but look at all the huge amount of research done ever since. I mean, there's no excuse. And here's another, Larry. There's no excuse for him to not know Lee Oswald was standing in the doorway of the book depository. But is that a centerpiece of Oliver Stone's new film? I take.
Yeah, the motorcycle cops too. There's no reason he should know all about that.
That's right. Yeah.
All about it.
That's tangible evidence, you know, if there's any.
This is Jim Juginio playing the same role in relation to Revisited that Robert Groden played in relation to JFK.
Give us a call.
We'll document this in spades when we go through it because there'll be key evidence, even when he's got good experts like Mantek, who's a leading expert on the medical evidence, and Horn, one of the leading experts on the medical evidence, but also on the alteration of the Z film. If you threw in Costella, then you'd have a perfect triple, you know, play there by three really great experts, but they'd have decisive evidence that the film had been altered, and Oliver Stone would not be in doubt. That's only possible because of Eugenio manipulation and deception and suppression. I'm convinced.
Well, like I said, it's got to be. I think it's in part it's a good documentary because at least, you know, it takes. We go up another notch. You know,
you're right about that. Mainstream,
right? That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Another notch in getting, you know, this out to the younger generations, you know, in some way, you know, where, hey, at least he mentions his film JFK, and they'll, hey, let me go, you know, and check out the film, you know, and. But
Larry, on three major issues: Lee in the doorway, the faking of the Becker photographs, and the editing of the Zapruder film, he does not address. So that is, you know, he's got this thing about the rings. We'll talk about that. But that's trifling compared to what you've done by superimposing.
And now that you mention that, and I think because they gave Morley, you know, they allowed Morley to bring in the Joanides thing. I mean, in the whole context of the JFK assassination, the Joanides issue is, you know, it's like an afterthought. It's not really that important, you know. As far as the cover,
I have opinions about Jefferson Morley that are very unflattering.
Yeah, Aguilar was there too, Gary Aguilar,
and they had David Talbot, you know. But Aguilar, you know, I don't think
Aguilar shouldn't be anywhere near a film by Oliver Stone. I mean, I think that's embarrassing.
There was a couple of shills. Now let's get that straight, but not all. You know,
we all would agree with Doug Horn and David Mantek. I mean, you know, but the point is, it wasn't balanced and it wasn't thorough. I'm very, you know, I think he's got these three glaring omissions right off the bat that are so central.
If you want to really, you know, talk about advancing the case, yes.
If he wanted his thing to really show some evidence and really blow it up big time, not just move it up a few steps, but to just blow it out the water. He has the opportunity.
He had the opportunity, but I'm telling you, Eugenio wanted to shunt not just me, but my collaborators, including you, Larry, to the side. I mean, that was the whole purpose of doing this hit piece on me that had no substance, no warrant whatsoever, and came out of the blue. That's what puzzled me. Why is D. Eugenio doing this massive hit piece in Kennedy's and King on me here and now? And it crossed my mind at the time it was to divert Oliver Stone from coming close to me and to all the work we have done collaboratively, where I brought together all the experts from the beginning to shatter the cover-up. I mean, that's what I did. Jim DiEugenio did not do that. Jim DiEugenio wrote his own piece about JFK, a single authored piece. What I have done is bring together the best experts in the world, as I continue to do, to blow the whole case apart with great success. Oliver really was played by DiEugenio. I think
and Jim, some of those experts aren't even with us anymore, like Dr. Livingstone. You know, I mean, who better than him, you know, to give you, you know, an assessment, you know, of the brain, you know, than him, you know. And
right.
Geez,
and Chuck Crenshaw, of course, no longer with
right. The ones that you have brought together, you know, in the past, you know, who really,
but their work was there documented already in Assassination Science. I mean,
that's right.
Has Oliver not read my books? You know, if he hasn't read Assassination Science, Murder in Dealey Plaza, Great Zapruder Film Hooks, then he's worthless, because he's not looking at the most serious objective scientific studies ever produced about the cover-up, where Doug Horn comes along many years later and makes contributions that are extremely important, but in a way, he's rounding out and filling in the details of what we'd already established.
No, he was on the inside because he was in the ARB.
Right, and that was wonderful to have a source who'd been on the inside.
Yeah.
Larry, I think we got a good overview now. Let's turn to your new stuff about Michael Paine in the beginning, and then turn to more.
Jim, before we start, what does our audience need to know about Ruth Payne and Michael?
Well, they need to know that when Maria came to Texas, Ruth Payne took her in. Ruth Payne became her handler. Ruth Payne was instrumental in getting Lee, when he came to join her from New Orleans, a position in the book depository only weeks before the assassination. Ruth Payne arranged it. She put the patsy in the position where he could be framed. So this is a key player. Michael, her husband, also appears to have played roles. And here's where Larry's latest work seems to me to be shedding more light on exactly what role he played. So I very much like what you're doing here, Larry. Let's go for it.
We're also going to talk about Umbrella Man. Don't forget.
No, I know.
We're rolling. We took 2 years off, but that doesn't mean we missed a step.
Yeah. Well, we all know, you know, back in the summer of 2016.
I've not seen anything, Larry. I'm not seeing it. If you're there, we go.
Yeah, you got it there, right?
Oh yeah, and the backyard photos were found at Ruth Payne's house.
Yeah, you here? Are we good here?
Yep.
Yes, we're good. Go.
All right. Well, if you guys want to read it, you know, and we'll comment, you know, but
is this Michael Paine in New Orleans with Lee?
Yeah.
During the presidential primaries in the summer of 2016, national attention was turned toward Rafael Cruz, the father of Ted, after Donald Trump insinuated he might have been involved in the JFK assassination, because he appears to be in a film sequence of Lee leafleting in front of the Trade Mart in New Orleans, the summer of 1963. After drawing attention to the film, it was noticed other anomalies contained deserved more scrutiny than the Cruz issue. And by the way, we know that was Rafael Cruz. So Trump was right once again and was being trashed wrongly, because he was making the truthful statement and his critics were not. The following consecutive frames show how very subtle alterations continue to prove that most, if not all, of the film and photographic record of the assassination was altered, when it was not possible to dispose of the evidence altogether. By now, serious researchers have become used to finding this to be the case. The individual in the foreground in front of the congregation, which include Lee Oswald and Chauncey Holt, who's to the right, among others, shows clear evidence of facial alteration in all the frames where our subject is shown. Who might they have been protecting? The sequence contained truly amazing and impossible body contortions, as we shall see. Yes, use your cursor to identify. You got Raphael Cruz, you got Lee, then Raphael Cruz in the middle, and Chauncey over on the right.
Yeah, and notice they all seem to be in the same attire, Jim. That's what it is so amazing, shirt sleeve, thin tie, white shirt.
I agree. That was clearly a way of identifying one another as the players here.
Yeah,
in this.
they were working together down there, leafletting, and
Leafletting.
Right.
Yeah.
This was a staged event. There's no question about it. This was to enhance Lee's image, his persona as a pro-Castro communist sympathizer for future reference as events would play out.
Yeah.
Being sheep dipped, like
being sheep
dipped,
yes.
would have said.
Yes. Sheep dipped.
Is
Yes,
Chauncey
Gary.
Holt up there by Chauncey Holt? Has that been marked out? It looks like they blotched that out too, doesn't it?
What do you mean, Chauncey's facial features?
Yes, the left side looks like it's been marked out to me.
We'll see. And I don't know if we have him in other frames, but this is the guy that we're interested in here.
Right, the guy on the far left in the foreground.
If you look at this video in real time, I mean, he's only in the film for maybe about 10 to 12 frames, and I don't even think that many. Because
really only a second or two max.
He just crosses in front of the camera and he's gone, that's it. You don't see him anymore, so you have to isolate him, and start studying this guy, because it's just amazing, what's come out of it, and I don't know if you guys agree, but some of the stuff I'm going to show you here, needs to be looked at.
During the entire sequence, the individual appears to have a sports coat slung over his left shoulder as he walks with his head down as if trying to avoid the camera. The problem is the left hand appears to have been superimposed where the fingers are inverted in an impossible contortion. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need, it would be nice to have Ralph here tonight. He would be able to tell us.
But it's not even a left hand, Larry, as you observed prior to our conversation. Now, this is a right hand, not a left.
Yeah, if you're following here, what we're seeing, this would be a pinky, a ring, a middle index, and a thumb over here. Maybe
try it at home.
Yeah, right. You'd have to cross over and
I like that, Larry.
in order to get
a close-up reveals the following. Slide down.
Yeah.
There you see the hand. If the reader does a double take on this, it's because it's a right hand, not a left. Here's the same image with all the digits accounted for, Larry.
Yeah, again, pinky, is this,
You're right. Pinky, ring, middle, index.
Yeah. And the
you're
thumb?
100%. You're 100% correct.
Now, what is the purpose of this? That's why, now once you have established this, now what the hell is, what's the purpose? Because once you follow this guy, we're going to see the sequence here now, and he's going to cross in front. And as you can see, that the face has been retouched. Okay. Been retouched here. We got two squiggly lines that are,
it looks like ink running.
Yeah. And the hand is still, and notice that it's weird.
Well, Larry, let me reiterate my conjecture. There was something about his actual left hand that would have been identifying, possibly a watch that was distinctive, or other features of the hand they had to obfuscate. And they thought they could do it by superimposing a hand over the hand to conceal it. It's just that these guys aren't rocket scientists and they improvise with a right hand when it ought to have been a left.
Yeah.
It's very strange. Now, why? And perhaps he might have been leafletting as well. He was involved in that, in something there,
He could have a bump on his wrist.
No, this guy is slight in build. This is not,
Yeah.
but as we start to, he gets closer to us, we're able to discern, some of the, for example, the pattern here, the hair pattern, and other features here that might give us an indication of who this guy might actually be. Obviously, if we throw names out there, it's conjecture, but maybe not. That's the sequence, and that's all it involves. And and by the way, he's with another guy, and they've also obliterated his face. He comes out here in.
Larry, it wouldn't do for these guys to be identified as having been with Lee, and the fact he's wearing this similar clothing suggests to me, yes, he was part of the leafletting crew. He was there. And for him to turn out to be Ruth Payne's husband, leafletting with Lee Oswald in front of the Trade Mart, that raises too many questions.
Oh, and it answers a lot of questions too.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Answers that they don't want to emerge publicly.
Of course not. Okay, so then.
But there's to be more discovered about these images. Someone went to the trouble of retouching the face of the individual to render him, you say unrecognizable, I say all but unrecognizable. The shape of the face, hairline, right ear, forehead, and slim build appear to be dead ringers for Michael Paine, husband of Ruth. The reader will recall that Ruth Payne, his wife, had a relationship with the Oswalds, and she went to New Orleans to collect Marina to bring her to Dallas to live with her in the late summer of 1963. Moreover, the Paynes have long been suspected by JFK researchers of being deeply involved in the events of 22 November 1963 by facilitating the setup of Lee by securing for him a position at the book depository, as I've already observed. Yeah. For instance, Commission Document 329 contains the following on page 93. Mrs. Payne denied that her husband had ever commented to her that he felt sure Lee Harvey Oswald had killed the president, but did not feel Oswald was responsible, and we both know who's responsible. Mrs. Payne was asked concerning the following quotation. Oswald wouldn't have any reason to do it, but when you get right down to it, the only guilty person is that bastard himself. Mrs. Payne stated that she could not recall her husband using those exact words in conversation with her, but the meaning of the words would be compatible with his feelings on November 23rd, 1963. Now, would that be an allusion to LBJ?
Who knows? But this is a very strange statement here, because first he's saying that there's no way, that it could have been, that he could have been responsible. And then at the end, compatible, it's a very, very strange statement. This one here in CD 329, but this is the one where a lot of authors have cited about Michael Paine in that phone call saying, we both know who's responsible. Okay. And that's how that came about on the evening, because very conveniently, for the weekend of the assassination, Michael Paine and Ruth Payne had a blow up, where he left the house. And
did she ever identify who she meant by that bastard himself?
Oh, of course, Lee. It's what says Lee wouldn't have had any.
Oh, she actually meant this was actually meaning to say it actually was Lee, even though Michael was skeptical about it.
Well, that's why. That's my point. And this whole passage is going,
I don't think the Paynes would have described Lee as a bastard. That seems very strange. They were being
They changed
Go
the
ahead, Gary.
testimony a lot. They changed the testimony a lot in all these, documents.
Yes,
So
you're
they
right.
might have
You're
just
right.
put that
You're
in
right. Okay, here we go down. This
So,
man's face.
we got an inset here of Michael Paine. Okay, and just so obviously, we can do overlays. Maybe, we might be able to, squeeze something in there, but like I said, the patterns, outside the face, are very, very similar.
Larry,
Uh,
I think it's highly probable that you've nailed him there in front of the Trade Mart. I mean, truly.
I mean, you've got the nose here, the forehead, the high forehead, the hair pattern here. Obviously, this picture was taken much, much later, okay, in
Yes.
1964, where his hair pattern is a little different, but
They could have darkened it in.
I beg your pardon?
They could have darkened it in his head.
No,
They could
obviously,
changing the hairline is a piece of cake with photoshopping.
yeah. Okay, but it's very, very similar characteristics here,
So how many years was this picture before that one? How many years?
Oh, this one was 1964, maybe April or May of 1964, this one.
Okay, well, that's not
And
too
this,
long.
yeah, and this is August, obviously, of 63.
Okay.
The thing here. Now, the squiggly lines, all right? I mean, the retouching is so obvious, that, something is going on with this guy here, and this is it. This is the end.
In closing this post, the only reason one can imagine these grotesque alterations would have to be taken is that perhaps he was also part of the leafleting team that day, with which I agree, and his identity had to be concealed at all costs. It's emblematic of the current state of affairs for the JFK assassination photographic evidence as proposed by Beverly Brunson in the late 1960s, where she concluded that all surviving photos and films have been altered. If this is indeed Michael Paine, what was he doing there? The man in question is indeed wearing the exact same attire as Lee and Raphael Cruz look alike. Raphael Cruz, I have no doubt. If this was part of setting up Lee Oswald, it was come as no surprise that apparently both Paines would actually be working in tandem to make this happen, where the details are beyond the scope of this short blog. Larry, I think that's a very nice contribution.
Yeah.
Well, it's looks, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck,
Yes.
Well, if you take your coat and you throw it over your back, your thumb should not be where your pinky is.
that is so bizarre.
Yeah.
Now, here you have something, a sequel that's really important, too, about some key players here in terms of the Zapruder film, The Umbrella Man and the Cuban.
Yeah, I keep thinking about that article on Dateline, where they show him there on the tarmac, Jim and Gary, this thing just opens up a whole new angle here, because this is real proof of Secret Service complicity, because if they've got that guy over there, right there on the tarmac within feet of JFK, in a very, very restricted area. I mean, how more restricted could that be?
That means they knew his identity and they felt comfortable with him being there. And of course, you're talking about the Cuban as having been there.
Yeah. We're gonna revisit that in a minute. What we're doing here is replicating, reproducing, the scene down there where he's got his fist up, and we looked at
where many of us believe he was signaling to the driver, William Greer, to bring the limousine to a halt.
Absolutely.
The umbrella man is pumping the umbrella visible from all the shooter locations. It indicates the target is still alive. Keep shooting.
I don't know of anybody who's ever looked at the JFK case. If you studied this and you know about these two individuals, and obviously, what their role what the role was, that day. And as you can see, that this is the Botham. No, this is the I keep forgetting, the film taken from over the other way from, I believe, Commerce, but it was still a ways where they still had to go in and
Let me-
retouch his face here, you know?
Let me remind you that Josiah Thompson was recruited to do a series debunking conspiracy in the case of JFK for the New York Times. It was going to have 50 different segments. The very first was on the Umbrella Man, and Tink was seeking to explain how there was an innocuous explanation for him being there, and that what you have to do in studying these matters is realize that all these pieces may have a simple explanation that's non-conspiratorial. But I published a piece about it, just ripping it apart, and that was the only segment of the 50 plan that they actually produced. I think they found the cost-benefit ratio was not what they wanted. Let me read this. Let me read this, Gary. No,
Yeah.
from the top.
Oh, okay, well, at the top.
Umbrella Man and his Cuban companion have long been the subject of many articles and books in the past, as possibly being members of a paramilitary type operation in Dealey Plaza on 22 November, the centerpiece of a coup d'etat that day. Botham, Towner, Willis, Rickerby, and other photographers caught these two dudes in action that day. We've already described what they were performing.
Yeah, and when you, this is why Blender is so darn, you know, important and useful, because it can confirm here, you know, how the sun was striking these two individuals that day, because Blender doesn't lie. You know, it just, you know, gives you, you know, what the models are and how they react, you know, to the light source, you know, and how those shadows are going to fall, you know, according to the sun as it was, you know, that day, November 22nd. And we have confirmed, you know, the position of the sun. That's one of the most important parameters, you know, with the composition of the 3D composition. And as you look here at Umbrella Man, you can see that his hand is, and the sun is visible. And up here, you got the same effect.
Yeah.
All right. And his head is under the umbrella, so it's in the shadow. But this guy, you should be able to see his face. Okay, right here. And we know that he was wearing this beret type of hat. He had glasses, you know, some sort of like a jacket, like and brown shoes. Even brown shoes I've seen in the images. But yeah, we're right here, right? Okay, here.
Yep. In Blender, using generic models, we get these images, obviously from different perspectives, where the Cuban was pumping his fist and Umbrella Man was pumping his umbrella up and down, which would appear to be some kind of signals. As confirmation that our Blender composition is correct, notice both above and below images show Umbrella Man's right hand in the sun, as well as the shadows that fall in the correct direction. This indicates the position of the sun in our composition is correct. Following this pattern, Cuban Man's face should be plainly visible as in the Blender model, with a shadow of his right arm and hand falling behind the individual.
Yeah,
And Larry, I just say, given he's signaling the stop, at this point, actually, the limousine would have been at a halt. You're showing it there. It would have already been
because this is as of Z255 and the Ultra 6. Okay, that's what this image still represents, and that from the research that I have done, that would have been the position of both of them. If you look at from the Z film, you can see the corner of the umbrella next to the Stemmons Freeway sign right here.
Yes.
If you look from the perspective of the Zapruder coming this way, you can see the corner of the umbrella, okay, in frames as the and at this portion, you know, of the Z film. So this is more or less, you know, where they were located at that time as of Z255. Okay, now
the face of this individual appears to have been airbrushed over, a technique seen in so many of the other images that have survived over the years. The Blender model's face is in full sunshine.
yeah, this is the guy I'm talking about here. Okay,
Of course.
so let's, after the
This
motorcade.
is, of course, after the fact. Everyone else is running around like a chicken with their head cut off.
Yeah.
And the umbrella man and the Cuban are just sitting there calm as can be, like nothing out of the ordinary had taken place. They could be waiting for a cab.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody who's ever studied the JFK assassination. This in itself is, is so obvious proof. How can you explain this away? Not that what was the name of that guy that they brought in? At the HSCA, to show his umbrella. I don't even remember his name because it's not even really important. But yeah, they just sit, there. And here's a really good image that I was able to pull, where we can see that he's got these heavy, very heavy
Glasses.
thick glasses. Yeah.
Let me say they're good at obliterating noses. When you look at those photos of W in Dealey Plaza, they have messed with his nose. There was some text there, Larry, if you want me to catch the text.
Yeah.
The bespectacled, dark-complected man is seen intently looking up Elm Street, but this is after the assassination has taken place.
Absolutely. And we're starting to see a little bit of more detail on Umbrella Man here.
Yes.
And
like
here's
that.
another one. Here's another one.
Where you got to scroll down further.
Yeah, other images capture the Cuban speaking into a walkie-talkie device, and as he stands up, the device can be clearly seen in his left back pants pocket, and that's
Larry, you went too fast. Yeah, there you
Okay.
go. There you go. The other image captures the Cuban speaking into a walkie-talkie device. As he stands up, the device can clearly be seen in his left back pants pocket.
And let's not forget that a lot of this work that we're going to see comes back to Jack White. Again, we stand on the shoulders of giants sometimes, and sometimes we have to go back to his work that
Jim Hicks, who claimed to be communication coordinator, has a strap for one of these walkie-talkies hanging out the back of his trouser.
Yes, in one of the Willis photos you can see him. Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
So here he's this is like real close to right after the assassination where because the woman here is still sprawled, she's on the grass, she's still laying on the grass, and he's now just starting to accommodate himself there. And this is one of the most egregious that I've ever seen, where he's clearly talking into that walkie-talkie, and he's looking down Elm Street as the motorcade has already disappeared under the triple underpass.
Yes.
And here's what Jack did, and again, we proudly show this work, because he did this and it's readily available, and you can use it. I always like to cite his work like this. And there he is. That's what he was doing.
This image shows the outline of the Cuban as he talks into his walkie-talkie, courtesy of Jack White. Here, the subject appears to be carrying a device in his left back pants pocket.
Yeah, and here it is, right here. I mean, you can even see the antenna here where it's been,
Yes.
And that's that. Okay.
Which brings us to possibly the weirdest coincidence of the day. Cuban Man, or the Cuban, was the subject of a full-page spread in the journal Dateline Dallas in 1992. This reproduction speaks for itself and is republished below.
We did, but I can't, we, this one is important, where this guy, he's at Love Field. They've located him here in this picture within a few feet of Air Force One. Okay. He goes down, takes part in the assassination as a signalman. Then he's here at Parkland, and he's just hanging out there, and he's got these cameras, so he must have been passing as some kind of photographer or journalist of some kind, So, and it's obviously the same guy, So, and I don't know what
I agree.
what your opinion of this is, but I think this is huge. You know, this is
Well, it is huge, Larry, because it means that the Secret Service was comfortable having this guy in close proximity to JFK, so they knew who he was. They
before,
knew.
before,
they-
during, and after.
Yeah, before, during, and after. That's very good, Larry. So he clearly played an important role
I mean,
here.
he's just on the right. He's just a few feet from the president.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody gets that close to the president.
Without being identifiable and known to the Secret Service.
That's right.
But we can read the article here where it says the Umbrella Man and the Cuban. Can you see that? Have been a curious mystery by researchers.
Oh, let me see. Yeah. The Umbrella Man and the Cuban have been a curious mystery to researchers of the assassination for years. Jack White of Fort Worth created a display of the JFK Center showing the movements of these two suspicious people, which is extremely popular. Figure 2 shows the Cuban sitting on the curb in Dealey Plaza next to the Umbrella Man. Last year, Tom Blackwell of Dallas donated the book, The Way We Were by Robert McNeil, to the Assassination Archives. On page 23, staff members found a most interesting picture, figure 1, that appears to be that of the Cuban in a scene at Parkland Hospital.
Isn't that amazing that such important photos would pop up, you know, in the least likely place, you know?
Yeah.
You know, Robert McNeil's assassination archives, you know.
Well, it's like finding the photograph of George Herbert Walker Bush in front of the book depository and Jesse Curry's JFK assassination file, published only by 7-Eleven.
You never know where you're going to find these nuggets. Yeah.
In the foreground of this picture seems to be our mystery man, the Cuban, leaning on a limousine from the motorcade. The cameras hanging around his neck would have been a good way to go unnoticed because all the newsmen at the scene. Is this the Cuban? If it is, it makes what he was doing with the Umbrella Man in Dealey Plaza even more suspicious and significant.
I can't agree more.
Yeah. Also, his picture has surfaced in a picture postcard taken at Love Field, figure 3. We found the pictures. You make the call. Write to the JFK Assassination Information Center. Attention, the Cuban. Photo 603 Munger Box 40, Dallas, Texas 75202. If you have any more information or photographs of the Parkland Hospital or Love Field scene.
I used to go down there to the AIC. I went there a few times, but this is just, you know, disgusting. You know, it's just. But let's take it a little bit further here. In 2004.
Okay. In 2004, researcher Marcel de Hasseler published this comparison of Cuban or dark-complected man and identified him as convicted Cuban terrorist, virulent Kennedy hater, one-time doctor Orlando Bosch, who at the time of the assassination was in a frenzy trying to organize the removal of Fidel Castro from power in Cuba. The question that begs to be answered is how this individual made it into the tarmac as Air Force One was deplaning at Love Field in Dallas, continued on to Elm Street in time to see and participate in the JFK execution, then ended up at Parkland Hospital, enjoying a front row seat to the drama that was unfolding there as well. Obviously, he was well connected that day. Larry, there's a fellow, I think it's Santiago or whatever, that I think is another candidate. Who's a very
Felipe Vidal is another candidate.
I think actually,
but
my
that guy didn't wear glasses like Bosch did, you know, and the mustache and the profile, you know, who knows? But you know, I'm just throwing this out there, you know, that Marcel did, you know, because it's good work. It's a good possibility.
I'm just saying there's one other option of which I'm aware, to wit, that we've just mentioned. Gary, your thoughts?
It's how twisted his neck and chin are. And the one all the way to the left, he does have an odd, you know, like his chin bends. And if you look at the one in the middle, that's what it's doing.
Oh, this guy at the time was, a very important cog, and later on, he fell out of favor, but it was because he was such a fanatic, in the anti-Castro thing, and he would go to any means, through possible, even assassination, just to get Fidel Castro removed, from power. Now we move on to Umbrella
Yeah,
Man.
as far as Umbrella Man is concerned, Jack White did this study years ago, identified CIA operative Gordon Novell as the man pumping the umbrella during the assassination and apparently working in tandem as a signal man with Cuban man. In this context, they have probably been signaling the need for more shots because the mark had not been retired. But I believe that the Cuban was signaling pull the limousine to a halt. That was the fist he was upraised, and the umbrella by
Yeah,
pumping meant he's not dead yet. Keep shooting.
yeah. It could each of them definitely could have had a specific, signal task, at the moment. Yes, I thought Jack did brilliant work, on this, and we're going to look at this here, applying the same techniques that we have applied for, identifying the man in the doorway, and the same technique as the backyard man photos, where we identified Roscoe White as the man who stood in for the photos and then did the matte insert, the face. And it's very interesting. I just wanted to, as an aside, I was looking at this video that supported the backyard man photos being authentic, and they did a grid measurement of just the face like we did, okay, but they just did this part, okay, they did not do the entire head, okay, like we did, which proved that Lee's head could not fit in there. All right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and so which proves that this is the same technique that was used, for the autopsy photos, where they inserted, a perfect, scalp head, in the back, where there really wasn't a Waltz hole, in the occipital parietal area, there. But using the same technique with the overlays and the probe and the known photo, and we've got enough elements here as we had with the man in the doorway to get pretty good overlays and data coming out of this one here. And the first is side by side, okay, where we're first just getting those known features here. Again, the hairline here is very telling. The shape of the head, the position of the chin, the ear, okay, the nose. There's some kind of artifact here that we obviously cannot take into consideration. Obviously, that's not part of the head there. Okay, but
the above side by side appears to be a good candidate for digital overlays, as explained in earlier work. Despite the blurriness of the probe image, these are very interesting overlays which emerge.
And here, so first we've got this 0%, then we jump to 25. Okay, then we go to 35, and then we go to 50% on the opacity. And, again, what comes out is a pretty good identification here of Gordon Novell being Umbrella Man, like Jack, so brilliantly before.
Yeah.
Huh?
That just as Jack had conjectured, yes.
Yeah, but like again, now with the technology that's around now, when Jack wasn't, well, there was, but we weren't applying it because Photoshop has been around for, my God, 30 years at least, and just using, his same images, which is, and again, and look, the neck is perfect, fits perfectly,
That's very telling. That's very telling. Forehead slop, general head contour, eye socket, hairline, ear position, chin, brow ridge, and neck all appear to match a known photo of Gordon Novell. Jack White just might have nailed this one.
And here's your animated GIF, which again, we have been, trained to, how to look at these, and the less movement, then you know that you have a positive ID, and I think we do have a positive ID
You got a
here.
match.
Yeah, that it was, and let's not forget, Gordon Novell was not just, you know, he was a very sophisticated technician. He could do anything that, you know, had to do with eavesdropping. In fact, it was suspected that he's the one that actually bugged Garrison's offices. All right. So this guy, he was a very, very well trained in the area of surveillance, audio surveillance, and bugging and that kind of thing.
Gary, just as you did with Billy Lovelady and Lee in terms of backdoor man, I'd like you to do both Santiago and Bosch for Cuban.
It all depends on the perspectives, you know.
Oh, I know whether you can find the available photographs, but I suspect you will be able to do that.
So that's just you know, an update, you know, on a couple of things that have been, but the big thing right now obviously is the Oliver Stone movie, and how that's going to impact, you know, any decision going forward of the government to finally, you know, release the what needs to be released. Again, I you know, a lot of people are giving this Morley thing a lot of importance. I don't think that's really important in the whole context of the thing. Okay, yes, you know, this had to do with these Cubans that were being run by the CIA guy, you know, and Lee was, you know, was in that group. Yeah.
Larry, it's a red herring. What could be more obvious? That's what Morley does. He's an op. This is not an honest broker.
Tell it like it is.
He's a fraud. I have published about him in the past, as I have about many other of these phony groups that pretend to be experts, even most disappointingly Josiah Thompson, whom I once admired.
Okay, I'll throw this at you. Between the discovery of and this thing of Morley insisting with the Joanides thing, and the discovery of the 3 Mexican presidents who were CIA assets, which to you are the most important, the most relevant, and the most that have more to do with this case?
Of course.
You see what I mean?
And Larry, beginning next week, we're going to look at Oliver Stone's film in segments, and we're going to dissect it very much along the lines we've done tonight. Gary, I think this has been sensational. I'm so glad we're back in the saddle again. Larry continues to do sensational work. Take us out, my friend.
You got it. All right. We'll be back next week with JFK Show number 262. Hope you enjoyed 261.